Look at that plant. I want you to know that everything was grown in my garden. Don't touch that plant!
Is it poisonous?
She'll become part of the plant.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Flower Power Garden Hour. I'm your host, Marlene, and this is your March Garden to Do list. So as usual, I will just run down what you need to do in the garden, but some of these I'm going to go into a little more explanation for. So Joe might jump in if I sound like I'm confusing you, because if I'm confusing you, obviously then I'm confusing Joe because he's easily confused. Right, Joe? Okay, you don't need to say hi yet. Oh, but first, before we get started, I want to talk about a conference I went to. I went my second time going to the biocontrol conference, where it's leading experts in the industry, companies all gather, 2-day conference about obviously beneficials, biopesticides, and it was very informative. There's even one talk that I went to. It was an owner of a biochar company who was using it for specifically vineyards. So it was interesting to hear that because I am using some biochar after I had my episode on biochar that hopefully y'all listened to. I'm using it. Let's see what else. Oh, of course, Suzanne Wainwright. She's known as the Bug Lady. She's been a beneficial consultant for years and years. It was actually funny that she said she was kicked out of the Master Gardener program because she said, I only want to use beneficials. And they're like, well, that's not part of our protocol. That was years and years ago. She's a great speaker, but I went to her post-conference talk, and it was actually about cannabis because a lot of people in the cannabis industry are there. A lot of people in the cannabis industry have to use beneficials, biopesticides because of labeling and just, it's so highly tested. So I went because a lot of the information she talks about, of course, I could just use at the conservatory. And I realized, oh my gosh, I don't know what species of thrips I have. So thrips is one of the main pests I have at work, and my predecessor has told me, it's the banded greenhouse thrip, and most people are aware of the western flower thrip. And she's like, well, you can't just ID it by looking at it. You got to, look at a scope. And I'm like, well, where are keys? Because then you have to key it out. So I went back to work, and pretty easy key she gave me to use, and I was able to key it out. And sure enough, I don't have the banded thrip. I have the echinothrips, which wonder why all the beneficials I've been throwing at it don't work. No beneficials work on it. So I have to spray with Conserve, which is it's a very mild organic pesticide. But then today, the new manager of the research greenhouses was saying how she had a biopesticide company or a beneficial company come out, and they gave her a list of beneficials to buy. And I'm like, well, did they ID your thrips? She's like, no, they didn't. I'm like, well, come on over. I'm getting pretty good at IDing these thrips. And that's actually wrong. I can't use, Joe, when's the last time you've used a dissecting scope?
Boy.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for 15 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Why?
Because I've been having to use a dissecting scope. Ours is really bad. But I'm like, I don't know the first thing I don't remember about, it's basically like how to zoom in and get it sharp. Don't look at me like that.
I mean, you can, I was going to say, you can use binoculars, but you can't.
No.
No.
No. So I actually pulled some students over, and I have bad eyes. I have getting old eyes and bad eyes.
Whoa. Hold on.
What?
If you have I don't know the answer to this. I think I do.
If you have bad eyes, a dissecting scope should correct that. I'm not sure. Anyways, you have to look at the tiny, tiny little hairs on part of it. It was almost impossible. So we were able to ID. So that was actually sort of fun. But now I know what kind of thrips I have, and conference was really good. And today I pitched it to Suzanne, the Bug Lady. I'm like, and maybe one day you could be on my podcast, hint, hint. But she's really busy. But all right, so let's go into this list because it feels like spring in Zone 9.
Well, hold on.
Oh, hold on. Okay.
Hold on. You have a new tool that you've been using.
Oh, the new weed eater.
Correct.
Yes. What is it? orange.
It's orange, yes.
So it's like the
Narrow
other one.
in.
It's what?
I said narrow in on it. You know.
Well, Kubota's orange, but I don't have a Kubota weed eater.
No,
That'd be awesome.
you don't.
That would be
No.
called a tractor.
Yeah.
It's,
Chainsaw?
yeah,
What's your
DeWalt,
chainsaw?
not DeWalt.
No.
It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't believe I forget this.
You have a DeWalt weed eater.
Yeah,
That's battery operated.
Yeah.
This is a different one because you can't use that one for some reason.
What is this one?
Steel.
Thank you. It's my chainsaw is steel. I can't remember it. I couldn't remember that. It's really beautiful. It's got a lot of power. Battery is really heavy.
It's a big battery.
It's a big battery. And I'm not going to say, oh, the battery lasts a long time because I use it for a long time at a time. But you got the supercharger.
I got the supercharger, and it's the biggest battery that you can get for a unit like that.
Yeah, and it doesn't make it more heavy, but man, it's powerful, and it cuts down the mallow, the cheese weed even. Usually when I try doing that, it gets bound with my other weed eaters. It gets bound up into, apparently I'm not supposed to say weed eater because that's a brand. Someone called me on that. I'm like, well, that's like saying Q-tips. No one calls them ear swabs. So it's very beautiful. Yeah. Okay.
They do make a backpack battery kit. It's an even bigger battery.
Yeah. It's enough for me to carry this one around. Yeah. It's the first weed eater I'm actually using the little strap over the shoulders to help me. I'm like, maybe it'll help me like weed eat a little bit longer, but keep
I mean, you can use it with the other ones too.
Mm-hmm. I know. Yeah. Okay. Let's get this list going. So it feels like spring, even though we had I'm not going to say random because our last official, I think, frost date is around April, beginning of April. So anything's possible. That's why you don't want to start your veggies too soon or plant them too soon. So right now you can start your summer veggies inside or in a greenhouse or even direct sow, which means take the seed and put them in the soil. You could do that with your tomatoes and cucumbers and eggplants. They are selling them at the nurseries. You can't even buy them, but protect them. Do not put them in the ground. Remember, night temperatures need to be consistently 50 degrees. That's just a good round number. If you plant them in the soil and the soil is too cold, the plant's not going to actively grow. It'll just sit there. Roots can rot. And sometimes if we get another cold spell, it can freeze out. So you're not gaining by planting them any earlier at all. In fact, it could be detrimental to them. So buy them, sow them. Very easy to sow most of your summer veggies inside. You don't need a heat mat, but if you do, it just speeds up the process a little bit. I personally love just the seed starting mix you buy. Always make sure it's moist before you put it in whatever container you're starting your seeds in. If it's a cell pack or solo cups or even little Dixie cups, remember, drain hole, add a drain hole. Keep them moist. That's key. You could cover them with the same seed starting mix, or I like to cover most seeds with like vermiculite, just a nice layer. Some, if they're tiny, you could just place them on the soil, and as you gently water them in, basically they'll just push down into the soil. That's enough. So you could put them on heat until they start germinating and get a few inches tall, then take them off the heat, and then light. So some seeds need light to germinate somewhat, but others really don't. So you don't really need to put the lights on until they start growing, or just a really bright windowsill. So it's not rocket science. It's pretty easy. Remember, plant like 2 seeds in each cell pack or 2 seeds in each random cell pack. I'll do just because not all of them are going to take. Almost all summer veggies don't need any pre-treatment. You could just plant them right away. When I say pre-treatments, like sometimes you soak your peas to get them germinating. Some strange seeds need scarification, which means you actually need to like scrape up the seed coat. Stratification means they need cold before. None of these do. Sunflowers, you could start your sunflowers and other summer annuals. You could start them in pots right now inside, or you could direct sow them. So if you like sunflowers, now is the earliest time to direct sow them into the ground. You could also plant dahlias, my shipment that I ordered back in fall, because I'm like, that's it. I'm going to get some of these that are always out. They just came. So you're going to plant dahlias. You could also still plant some winter veggies. It's still cool enough. Beets, second round of broccoli, carrots, celery, Swiss chard, kale, loose leaf lettuce, radish, and turnips. And it is time to plant potatoes. You could buy seed potatoes, which are basically just potatoes that are grown purposely for starting in the ground, or you could go and buy potatoes from the grocery store, ideally organic, so they're not treated with anything. And as long as they have an eye, and the correct term for an eye is the node, because potatoes are modified stems, so they have nodes. That's where the growth occurs. And then you could plant the whole potato. If you are going to cut it up into sections, I do like to callus it, let it dry a bit instead of taking a fresh cut potato and putting it in the ground, because it can just rot out. And you plant it in a loose substrate. And the idea is, as the stem starts growing, you bury portions of the stem, because then roots will grow along that stem. You don't have to do that if you're a lazy gardener like me. But the idea is you get more potatoes that way, because then they form along those roots that are forming. Right, Joe? You've been eating a lot of potatoes.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, you went from eating no potatoes, or you ate sweet potatoes, to now you eat a lot of potatoes. Yeah, potatoes are good. And why are you eating them? Just because they're a quick starch? You eat a lot of calories a day.
Yeah.
How many calories do you eat a day?
I don't know right now.
It's a lot.
Decent amount. Potatoes are filler.
What?
That's it. So they're empty calories, low caloric, low
you don't
glycemic
add anything
index.
to them.
Nothing.
Yeah, if you do add butter. No.
Not to the potatoes.
No, to the potatoes.
No.
Okay. Anyways, I like potatoes, but not like that. Anyways, I'll try to grow a lot of potatoes for you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Perennials. Even, we're chances are we are past frost. But still be cautious of very frost-sensitive plants that you put outside. But almost any perennials, it's time to plant. Summer blooming bulbs like gladiolus, amaryllis, lilies. Now's the time to plant summer blooming bulbs. If you have spring blooming bulbs, remember, just let the foliage die down completely before you do anything. All that good chlorophyll and sugars, that's going back into the bulb. All right, so soil. Remember, you're not planting yet. I mean, you might be direct sowing seeds, but go ahead and add compost to the top of your areas that you're not working, just as to add nutrients and also to prevent spring weeds from showing through. But if you're trying to replenish your soil, compost, chicken manure, alfalfa pellets, things called soil booster or planting soil. Remember, those are all forms of compost that just have additives to them. Prune up. Start cleaning things back that you were leaving in case we had like heavy frosts. Check irrigation. Right now is the time. If you have drip lines, open the ends of them and run water through so you're flushing out all the sediments. Also, make sure you don't have any broken irrigation so you're not losing water. Check irrigation before you just turn it on. Prune citrus. You could start pruning your citrus since soon as, chance of frost is over. Start pruning, thinning it out. And also prune once blooming plants that are done blooming. Remember, these are plants that if you prune them in fall, you're pruning off the following year's flowers. So things such as forsythia, quince, unless you want the fruit, then leave it on and don't prune. Camellias even, they're blooming right now, but once they're done, prune them. So once flowering, blooming plants, you could prune right after. So some things are already blooming. Like I think daphne's starting to bloom already. Once that's done, prune it. Add nematodes again. If you have pest problems, start thinking already about controlling them. I'm adding nematodes for the cucumber beetle. Preemptive sprays for whiteflies. Whiteflies are a problem and there's not a lot of control. Start looking under leaves for their flat white clear discs. Those are their eggs. You can try to start releasing or thinking about buying encarsia formosa, which is a parasitic wasp. It can take outside, but really once you plant all your stuff, start hosing off the undersides. And they're not so much right now, but when you start planting your vegetables or they start popping up, then you're going to want to think about some controls for that and get ahead of it. So that's pretty much the list. Joe, do you have anything to add?
To your list?
Yeah, to my list.
No. Do other people do the massive amount of not weed eating, but weed clearing that you do?
No. It's weed clearing has been my life for many years since we moved out of the city, the suburbs, just because there's a lot of untamed areas. So I do more weed eating than most.
It's a lot of weed eating.
It's a lot of weed eating. What else did I get in the mail that I'm going to try, but I have to be very, very careful with?
Oh, your blowtorch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. For weeds.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm only doing it when the weeds are in gravel, away from nothing.
Away from nothing?
Away from any buildings.
Okay.
And they're in gravel, and then the fire can't spread.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to carry like a bucket of water with me.
Yeah. You can do it by the barns.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because
metal.
No.
Oh.
Because I catch those on fire all the time. Like during the summer.
When you're welding.
Yeah, when I'm welding.
Yeah. You catch yourself
grinding.
on fire all the time when you're welding.
I do, and I don't burn, but I keep, there's a hose out by the back shop.
Okay.
I just bring it out, around.
Yeah, but I'm not, and this is definitely don't use it this is not a California thing for most homeowners.
No, it's not like a white, no.
No, it's just for little spot treatments.
Like in the driveway.
Mm-hmm, in the driveway. Another question, do you like asparagus?
Not my favorite.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all mine because asparagus is coming in. So for those who have asparagus or had asparagus, all the foliage is dead. Remember, you should have cut it down already. You should see spikes coming up. And just a hint, remember, only harvest any spears, which are basically the growths that are thicker than a pencil. But if it's your first year, let it go. Don't harvest the first year. Let it, because it's a perennial crop, you got to have it build up some root systems and some girth and vigor. So I think that is it. Of course, remember, I'm coming at this from zone 9. Your zone is going to be can be completely different based on your weather and your temperatures. If I've forgotten something, let me know. If you have a comment or a question, you could reach me at marlenetheplantlady@gmail.com. Remember to rate and review this podcast. If you like it, 5-star review. Especially tell a friend or share it on your social media, right? And then until next time, everyone, happy gardening.